It's sad news that the film star Val Kilmer, who played Batman and Jim Morrison, as well as starring in Top Gun, has died at the age of 65.
Hollywood's wildest star made his final call just hours before his death on April 1st, 2025. After battling throat cancer, losing his voice, and facing financial ruin, Val Kilmer had one last confession to make. The man who once commanded $9 million per film and dated Hollywood's most beautiful women ended up lonely part of every day for 20 years. His final words, shared with his daughter Mercedes, confirmed what insiders had whispered for years. Here's the full story. Val Kilmer was born on December 31st, 1959, in Los Angeles, California. He was the middle child of 3 boys, raised by parents who came from different cultural backgrounds. His mother had Swedish roots, while his father's side included Irish, German, and Cherokee ancestry. But Val's childhood wasn't easy. When he was just 8, his parents divorced, and 2 years later, his mother remarried. That shift brought new challenges and adjustments for Val, who was already a sensitive and artistic kid growing up in Chatsworth, California, just outside of Los Angeles. It was a quiet suburb, but close enough to Hollywood that dreams didn't seem too far-fetched. Val and his brothers, Mark and Wesley, were surrounded by stories, film, and imagination, and Val naturally gravitated toward performing. His creative spirit started to grow long before he ever stepped onto a big stage. Then came the tragedy that would change everything. In 1977, Val's younger brother Wesley, who had epilepsy and dreamed of becoming a filmmaker, died in a seizure-related accident. He drowned in their father's hot tub at just 15. Val was preparing to leave for Juilliard at the time. The pain of that loss stayed with him for life. Val later said his family was never the same again. For years afterward, he kept Wesley's memory close. He used his brother's name when checking into hotels, displayed Wesley's artwork in his home, and often spoke of him in interviews. He truly believed Wesley had the potential to be a directing genius, someone who could have matched Spielberg or Lucas. The loss hit so hard that Val said it took him years to fully return to himself. That heartbreak helped shape the kind of actor and person he would become. Val was raised in the Christian Science faith, and its beliefs played a powerful role in his life, especially when he later battled cancer. In Christian Science, illnesses are seen differently than in traditional medicine. Instead of saying someone has a disease, the belief is that it's merely a false suggestion, something spiritual rather than physical. When Val was diagnosed with throat cancer, he tried to treat it through prayer and spiritual healing. He worked with a Christian Science practitioner, trying to replace fear with faith, believing that the body would respond once the mind was healed. This way of thinking wasn't just about health. It shaped his entire worldview, including how he viewed death. In his eyes, dying didn't mean disappearing. It meant becoming invisible to others, but still existing. That faith, even if controversial to many, grounded him during some of the hardest moments in his life. During his teenage years, Val attended Chatsworth High School, and he wasn't the only future star walking those halls. Kevin Spacey and Mare Winningham were classmates, and all 3 would go on to successful careers. While Kilmer and Spacey didn't become close, his relationship with Winningham was more intense. Val once had a dream she was kissing someone else. When he woke up, he drove more than 300 miles to find her, and claimed he caught her doing exactly that. It sounds like something from a movie, but it reflected how deeply Val felt about everything. That kind of passion, sometimes beautiful, sometimes overwhelming, defined many of his future relationships. Years later, Val and Mare would end up acting together again, bringing that complicated connection full circle. In 1981, something historic happened. At just 17 years old, Val Kilmer became the youngest student ever accepted into Juilliard's drama program. It was a huge honor and a clear sign of his raw talent. Even while still grieving the loss of his brother, Val threw himself into his craft. He studied hard, and while there, he wrote and starred in his own play. He also made bold career moves, like turning down a part in The Outsiders, so he could do a Broadway play with Kevin Bacon and Sean Penn. That decision said a lot about what kind of actor he wanted to be, one who took risks and followed his instincts. Years later, in 2012, he received an honorary doctorate, a recognition of how far he'd come since that early Juilliard breakthrough. Val's big movie debut came in 1984 with the comedy Top Secret. It was a wild spoof where he played a rock star named Nick Rivers. Even though audiences didn't know him yet, he won them over with a mix of charm and silliness. He even sang all the songs in the movie himself, proving he was more than just a serious theater actor. But working on a comedy wasn't easy for someone trained in Shakespeare. Val approached the role like it was Hamlet, which frustrated the directors. Still, the film developed a cult following, and Val's performance stood out as something special. 2 years later, he became a global star with Top Gun. His role as Iceman, the cool and confident rival to Tom Cruise's Maverick, left a lasting impression. The movie made over $344 million, and suddenly Val Kilmer was a household name. What made things more interesting was that the tension between Iceman and Maverick wasn't just acting. Val kept his distance from Cruise on purpose to keep the rivalry real. He even carried a video camera everywhere, filming behind-the-scenes moments, while everyone else just tried to keep up. The cast became known for their off-screen adventures too, riding motorcycles through hotel halls and taking wild road trips to Mexico. That kind of rebellious energy seemed to follow Val wherever he went. From the beginning, Val had a reputation for being serious about his craft, sometimes too serious. He didn't just play roles, he became them. For Top Secret, he studied Elvis Presley's every move. When he didn't want a role, like in Top Gun, he tried to sabotage his audition by dressing badly and reading his lines with zero emotion. But even then, he still got the part. And when he played Jim Morrison in The Doors, he didn't just memorize lines. He learned every lyric Morrison ever wrote and started dressing like him months before filming. His performance was so real that even The Doors' surviving members couldn't tell the difference between Val's voice and Morrison's on tape. On the set of Willow in 1988, Val met British actress Joanne Whalley. The connection was immediate. They fell hard and fast, marrying the same year and eventually having 2 children. Joanne was an accomplished actress in her own right, and for a while, they seemed like a perfect match. But as Val's career took off and on-set romances made headlines, their relationship began to crumble. By 1996, their divorce was final, and it was reportedly one of the most expensive in New Mexico's history. Their love story, like many in Hollywood, burned bright and faded fast. Even at the height of his fame, Val never forgot his theater roots. In 1988, he took on the role of Hamlet at the Colorado Shakespeare Festival. It wasn't a safe, traditional version. His Hamlet was edgy and modern, performed in punk costumes with heavy metal music. He delivered famous lines while holding a whiskey bottle, and his raw intensity gave audiences something they hadn't seen before. Fans lined up around bookstores just to meet him, and he kept returning to the stage throughout his career. Whether it was Shakespeare or his one-man show as Mark Twain, Val proved that no matter how big the screen, the stage still held a piece of his heart. Val Kilmer's career took a dramatic turn in the early 1990s when he threw himself completely into the role of Jim Morrison for Oliver Stone's The Doors. This wasn't just acting, it was obsession. For 6 months, Kilmer practiced singing Doors songs every day. He memorized 50 of them and performed 15 in the film. He didn't wait for approval. He used his own money to rent a studio and filmed an audition tape where he acted out different phases of Morrison's life. He didn't just study Morrison's movements, he worked with the Doors' original producer, Paul Rothchild, to copy his voice, his way of thinking, even his breathing. When he played his recordings for the band, they couldn't tell the difference between Kilmer and the real Morrison. That's how deep he went. To look the part, Kilmer lost weight and trained to match Morrison's energy on stage. He didn't lip-sync, he actually sang all the songs live, over the band's original instrumentals. His voice would break down after a few takes, but he kept pushing. The scene for The End took 5 full days to shoot. He trained with choreographers to loosen his body and build stamina. Even Morrison's baritone singing voice took special coaching. The transformation was so convincing that even Rothchild said nearly every note in the movie was Val's, not Jim's. Then came Tombstone. In 1993, Kilmer played Doc Holliday, a Southern gambler dying of tuberculosis. To look the part, he ate almost nothing, just onions and tomatoes. He nailed Holliday's Southern drawl, and his performance was full of quiet menace. He improvised several key moments, like the famous wink before the OK Corral shootout. His line, "I'm your huckleberry," became legendary. He even turned a cup into a prop for one scene, mimicking gun spinning with it, which wasn't in the script. Kilmer managed to make Holliday both elegant and deadly, charming on the surface, but dangerous underneath. That same year, Kilmer played the ghost of Elvis Presley in True Romance, a tiny role, but a significant one. He was mostly out of focus, barely in frame, but still poured himself into the character. He wore a gold lame jacket and gave advice from beyond the grave to Christian Slater's character. It was a dreamlike part, and even though his face wasn't clearly shown, Kilmer was physically on set for every scene. It was a quiet reminder that even in small roles, he gave everything. But trouble followed him. In 1994, Kilmer took over the role of Batman in Batman Forever. Director Joel Schumacher didn't know what he was getting into. The two clashed constantly. Schumacher said Kilmer was rude to crew members and explosive on set. One day, things boiled over and turned physical. They shoved each other during a heated argument. Schumacher had been warned about Kilmer, but still gave him a chance. He regretted it. Their working relationship was so toxic that when the sequel came up, Schumacher refused to work with him again. Kilmer didn't argue. He walked away from Batman. Officially, it was because of scheduling conflicts. He had signed on to star in The Saint, but privately, he'd had enough. During Batman Forever, Warren Buffett visited the set with his grandkids. They didn't care about Kilmer. They cared about the Batmobile. That's when it hit him. Batman didn't matter. "There is no Batman," he later said. "It's not about the actor. Anyone can wear the mask." George Clooney took over, and the franchise crashed with Batman and Robin. Kilmer bet on The Saint instead. He played Simon Templar, a high-tech thief who used disguises to get what he wanted. In one film, Kilmer played a poet, a scientist, a businessman, and a rock star, all with different accents and styles. It was like watching 10 characters in one. Critics were mixed, but the movie made money, over $160 million worldwide. It showed that Kilmer could carry a big movie without a cape or cowl. But just as his career was reaching new heights, his personal life collapsed. In early 1996, while staying at a hotel in the Virgin Islands, Kilmer turned on the TV. CNN was on. That's how he found out his wife, actress Joanne Whalley, had filed for divorce. They had 2 kids together. Their son Jack had just been born a couple months earlier. Kilmer had no idea it was coming. He later said, "I found out I was getting divorced on television." He was shattered. Court papers blamed irreconcilable differences, but rumors swirled about on-set romances and long separations. Kilmer admitted he cried every day for 6 months after it happened. He missed his kids in ways I never thought possible, he said. The divorce wasn't just emotionally painful, it was financially brutal. At the time, it was the most expensive divorce in New Mexico's history. Meanwhile, the making of The Island of Dr. Moreau in 1996 was an absolute disaster from the start. What was supposed to be a major Hollywood film quickly turned into one of the messiest productions ever. Filming took place in Queensland, Australia, but the weather wasn't kind. Torrential rains destroyed entire sets, causing delays that were costing around $40,000 a day. Just 3 days into filming, the director Richard Stanley was fired by fax. He'd spent 4 years preparing for this film and couldn't let go. Instead of leaving, he snuck back onto the set disguised as one of the half-human dog creatures, hiding among the extras for weeks. Everything on set kept getting worse. Crew members were bitten by poisonous spiders and rushed to the hospital. The budget exploded, rising from $40 million to around $68 million. And by the end, only about 40% of Stanley's original script remained. Stanley's firing wasn't just abrupt, it was bizarre. Val Kilmer, the film's lead, had already been clashing with him. Stanley later said, Val would arrive and an argument would happen. 2 days in, Kilmer refused to leave his trailer for hours. Studio executives flew in, saw the chaos, and fired Stanley the next day. Devastated, he ran into the nearby rainforest. Soon after, he convinced local Aboriginal people to place stone patterns on set, trying to curse the production. Actress Fairuza Balk nearly quit in protest. Stanley wouldn't direct another movie for more than 2 decades. But the chaos didn't stop with Stanley's departure. Kilmer was difficult, but then came Marlon Brando. Still grieving the suicide of his daughter, Brando showed up late, refused to memorize lines, and used an earpiece to have them fed to him during takes. He and Kilmer constantly butted heads. On one infamous day, neither would leave their trailer until the other did. They held up filming for hours, costing the production hundreds of thousands of dollars. Brando eventually snapped and told Kilmer, "Your problem is, you confuse the size of your paycheck with the size of your talent." Yet strangely, Kilmer later said he enjoyed working with Brando, and that the legendary actor made him laugh. Tensions with Kilmer didn't stop there. On October 18th, things boiled over between him and co-star Tom Sizemore. Kilmer, who was being paid $9 million, mocked Sizemore for only making $2 million. That led to Sizemore throwing a 50-pound weight at him. It missed, but later, Kilmer spat on Sizemore during a take. Sizemore retaliated by punching Kilmer so hard in the chest that Kilmer had to be treated by medics. After that, the 2 actors wouldn't even be in the same room together. To finish the film, producers had to get creative. From October 20th onwards, nearly 70% of the scenes involving both actors were shot separately using body doubles. In some shots, they digitally inserted faces, an expensive trick in 1996 that added around $2 million to the budget. Director John Frankenheimer warned them, "If you need to fight, do it off camera and don't hit the face." It was a desperate move just to get the movie finished. But even in the final version, the lack of chemistry between Kilmer and the rest of the cast was obvious. After the disaster of Dr. Moreau, Kilmer's career started to fall apart. He'd been a major star with hits like Batman Forever and The Saint, making millions per film. But his bad behavior was becoming infamous. Directors and producers didn't want to work with him. Type difficult actor into a search engine in the early 2000s, and his name usually came up first. John Frankenheimer said he didn't like Kilmer, didn't like his work ethic, and never wanted to be around him again. Joel Schumacher, who directed Batman Forever, called him childish and impossible. On the set of Tombstone, co-star Michael Biehn said he never even shook Kilmer's hand. "I know Doc Holliday," he said, "but I don't know Val Kilmer." Then came the money problems. The IRS hit Kilmer with a $538,000 tax lien in 2009. Another lien followed for nearly $500,000. One of his properties, a massive ranch in New Mexico, was listed as collateral. In 2013, a company he allegedly hired to help with his financial mess sued him for unpaid fees. He claimed he never even hired them. It was a bitter twist. Kilmer, who once made millions per movie, was now drowning in debt and legal battles. The New Mexico ranch was special to him. It covered 6,000 acres along the Pecos River. He bought it during his marriage to actress Joanne Whalley and built a log house, guest cabins, and even a tree house. He said it was for his kids, but it was really for him. He tried to sell parts of it over the years, dropping the price each time. Finally, in 2011, he sold the whole thing for $18.5 million, far less than the $33 million he originally wanted. He kept just a small piece of the land, around 160 acres. Romantically, Kilmer had intense relationships, but none lasted. He dated Cher in the 1980s. He was 21, she was in her mid-30s. She later admitted she was madly in love with him. After his divorce from Joanne Whalley in 1996, he briefly dated Cindy Crawford and later Daryl Hannah. The breakup with Hannah hit him hard. In his memoir, he said he cried every day for 6 months. In 2004, he had a short fling with Angelina Jolie while filming Alexander, but it ended quickly when she got involved with Brad Pitt. By the time he released his memoir in 2020, Kilmer was brutally honest about where he stood. He wrote, "I haven't had a girlfriend in 20 years. The truth is, I am lonely, part of every day." It was a painful admission from someone who once ruled Hollywood, starred in major films, and dated the biggest names in the world. In 2014, Val Kilmer's life changed forever. He was diagnosed with throat cancer, but instead of going to the hospital for treatment, he turned to prayer. Kilmer followed the teachings of Christian Science, a faith that believes illness can be healed spiritually. He saw his cancer not as a disease, but as a suggestion, something that could be overcome with belief. So, for nearly 2 years, he refused chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery. During that time, his condition worsened. He started coughing up blood. His voice grew weaker, and eventually he was found unconscious and rushed to the hospital covered in his own blood. But even after that terrifying incident, he still held back from getting treatment. His friends and family were terrified. Everything changed in early 2016 thanks to his kids. His daughter, Mercedes, just 24 at the time, couldn't take it anymore. She looked him in the eyes and said, "Dad, I can't watch you die." His son Jack backed her up. The fear in their voices hit Kilmer harder than the cancer ever could. That was the moment he gave in. He agreed to chemotherapy and radiation. He even underwent 2 tracheotomies, one in 2016 and another in 2017 when the cancer came back. These surgeries saved his life, but came with a heavy price. Kilmer lost most of his voice. By 2018, the cancer was gone, but Kilmer was changed forever. Speaking became a struggle. Eating wasn't easy either. He needed a feeding tube, and the hole in his throat from the tracheotomy became permanent. He had to learn to talk again with a device that produced robotic sounds. He wrote in his memoir, "I'm Your Huckleberry," that talking, something he once loved, had become a constant battle. Still, Kilmer didn't hide. In 2021, he released a documentary called Val. It was made from over 800 hours of personal videos he'd recorded since the 1980s. Kilmer was one of the first actors to carry a video camera everywhere. He filmed himself on movie sets, with family, even during quiet moments alone. The documentary showed everything: his wild years, his regrets, his bravery, and his strange behavior. Kilmer admitted, "I have behaved poorly. I have behaved bravely. I have behaved bizarrely to some." He didn't excuse his past. He owned it. And the most powerful part? His son Jack read the narration, giving voice to the words Kilmer could no longer say himself. The film also touched on the backlash Kilmer faced in his career. He was once called difficult, especially during the filming of The Island of Dr. Moreau. The director even said he wouldn't cast Kilmer in a movie about his own life. But Val doesn't try to rewrite that history. Instead, it shows Kilmer answering those criticisms with raw honesty. And then came a moment Hollywood never expected. When Top Gun Maverick was being planned, Tom Cruise made a bold move. He told producers that if Val Kilmer wasn't in the sequel, he wouldn't do the film. Cruise insisted, "We have to have Val." The studio was nervous. Kilmer's condition made filming hard. His voice was nearly gone, but Cruise wouldn't back down. The two had been rivals when they first filmed Top Gun in 1986, but their bond had grown deeper over the years. Cruise wanted his friend in the movie, not just out of loyalty, but out of respect. The production team found a way. Kilmer appeared in Top Gun Maverick, not as a ghost of who he was, but as a living tribute to who he is: survivor, fighter, and artist. That scene, short but powerful, became one of the most emotional moments in the film. On April 1st, 2025, Kilmer died from pneumonia at the age of 65. It happened at his home in Los Angeles, surrounded by loved ones. His daughter, Mercedes Kilmer, confirmed it. Though pneumonia was the final blow, it was clear that his health had been deteriorating for a long time. Even with all that, Kilmer never stopped expressing himself. In his final Instagram post, he shared one of his abstract paintings. He wrote that it had a late-night glow and compared the colors to "when the campfire cools down, but you're still wide awake." It felt like a farewell, quiet and thoughtful, just like the man himself. In 2021, he had told the Associated Press, "I have no regrets. I've witnessed and experienced miracles." That line stayed with fans. When the news of his passing broke, Hollywood responded like it had lost a family member. Jim Carrey, who had worked with him on Batman Forever, said Kilmer was a generational talent and praised the way he faced his challenges with grace. Josh Brolin's tribute was raw and emotional. He said, "See ya, pal. I'm going to miss you." For Brolin, Kilmer wasn't just a colleague. He was a real friend. Nicolas Cage said he should have won an Oscar for The Doors. Michael Douglas remembered their time filming The Ghost and the Darkness and called him unforgettable. And Cher, who once dated Kilmer in the 1980s, described him as humorous, eccentric, a delightful nuisance, and a wonderful friend.